Well, Shabbat Shalom. I just want to welcome everyone that's here today. All our family and friends have gathered together, and I just want to welcome you if you're listening to the recording. We have a website. We would love for you to go to it. It has a lot more information about the Creator Sabbath. There's a lot of articles there, videos there, and if you want to join us for fellowship and worship, you can scroll down to the bottom of the events page, and you'll see the dates and times that we gather, and the website is lunarsabbathday.com. So today our discussion about the original timekeeping system is about the Hillel II calendar. And Brother Pete said he'd help me read today, and I'm Barbara, your host today. So here we go. I'm thankful for everyone who's here. Okay, the title is, Why Was the Hebrew Calendar Fixed by Hillel II? And another part is, Why was that ancient biblical calendar outlawed? Well, Constantine, we'll just review a little bit. Constantine accomplished three things, the ripple effects of which resound to this day. He standardized the planetary week of 7 days, making Dies Solis, Sunday, the first day of the week, Dies Saturni, Saturday, the last day of the week. The second thing, he exalted Easter and guaranteed that the true Passover and the pagan Easter would never fall on the same day. And three, he exalted Dies Solis as the day of worship for both pagans and Christians. And I'm hearing a little background noise. If you can mute your phone, that would be good. You could push *6. So, okay, here's the result of what happened with Constantine.
The result of Constantine's ecumenism was swiftly felt. All who refused to give up the use of the biblical calendar for calculating Passover felt the heavy hand of oppression fall on them. Constantine's son, Constantinus, took his father's act one step further and outlawed the use of the biblical calendar for Jews as well. Historian David Sidersky observed, "It was no more possible under Constance to apply the old calendar." That's David Sidersky, Astronomical Origins of Jewish Chronology, page 651, emphasis supplied.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Pete. And I'll just mention I have all these links down below for all these references, so we don't have to read them today, and those that are watching on the YouTube can find them below, and those of you that are here will get it in your recording link, the article. So we'll kind of not have to make you read all these references. In subsequent years, the Jews went through iron and fire, and the Christian emperors forbade the Jewish computation of the calendar and did not allow the announcement of the feast days. And so the Jewish communities were left in utter doubt concerning the most important religious decisions as pertaining to their festivals. And so the immediate consequence was the fixation and calculation of the Hebrew calendar by Hillel II. So because of Constantine outlawing them to be able to keep their calendar, everything was in confusion, and so Hillel II started the fixing.
Constantinus' act impacted apostolic Christians as well. While Tertullian reveals pagan Christians were already transferring their worship to the day of the sun, Christians becoming pagan, quote, declaring the new month by observation of the new moon and the new year by the arrival of spring can only be done by the Sanhedrin. In the time of Hillel II, the last president of the Sanhedrin, the Romans prohibited this practice. Hillel II was therefore forced to institute his fixed calendar. thus in effect giving the Sanhedrin's advance approval to the calendars of all future years. As early as the 2nd century, others clung to the true Sabbath for over 1,000 years, almost 40 years after the Council of Nicaea. The Council of Laodicea, circa 363 through 364, released a statement demanding that Christians work on the Sabbath and abstain from work on the Lord's Day. This decree, translated in English, states, quote, Christians shall not Judaize and be idle on Sabbato, but shall work on that day. But the Lord's Day they shall especially honor, and as being Christians shall, if possible, do no work on that day. If, however, they are found Judaizing, they shall be shut out from Christ.
Okay, so Christians at the time of the calendar change were not confused which day was Saturday and over Saturday being the Sabbath. Everyone knew that Dies Saturni had recently been moved from the first day of the pagan planetary week to the last day, while Sabbato was the 7th day of the Jewish lunar-solar calendar, which no one in power wished to be associated. So again, these were 2 different days on 2 distinct calendar systems, and everybody at that time knew about it.
Just as Constantine was the power behind an action that ultimately led to the destruction of the biblical calendar for use by Christians, another man, a Jew, was responsible for a reaction that had consequences just as far-reaching. Prior to the destruction of Jerusalem, the high priest had been in charge of the calendar. While the Sanhedrin, that's the rabbinical supreme court, presided in Jerusalem, there was no set calendar. They would evaluate every year to determine whether it should be declared a leap year. This task fell to the president of the Sanhedrin when the priesthood was no more. Quote, under the reign of Constantine, 337 through 362, the persecutions of the Jews reached such a height that the computation of the calendar was forbidden under pain of severe punishment, end quote. This was a reaction, it was a reaction to this situation that Hillel II, president of the Sanhedrin, took the extraordinary step in 359 CE of modifying the ancient biblical calendar to allow the Jews more easily coexist with the Christians.
So, okay, who is this Hillel II? We've all maybe heard about it, and if you know anybody that does the Jewish calendar or the Hebrew calendar, a lot of the Messianic groups, too, also go by the Hillel II calendar. So who is he? Hillel II was of the 5th generation of the land of Israel, and he held the office of Nasi, the Sanhedrin, between 320 and 385. So he was head of the Sanhedrin for 65 years, and he is sometimes confused with Hillel the Elder, as the Talmud sometimes simply uses the name Hillel. So anyways, Hillel II, he is traditionally regarded as the creator of the modern fixed Jewish calendar. In the year that this event happened, 670 of the Seleucid era, which corresponds to 358 CE, and 359 CE.
When Hillel II fixed the calendar, he incorporated leap years on a permanent basis. It is possible, but not provable, that this particular cycle of leap years was used and understood prior to Hillel, as it follows the 19-year Metonic cycle. Hillel based his calendar, quote, on mathematical and astronomical calculations, that is, rather than observations. This calendar, still in use, standardized the length of months and the addition of months over the course of a 19-year cycle so that the lunar calendar aligns with the solar years. He declared a 13th month to be intercalated in the 3rd, 6th, 8th, 11th, 14th, 17th, and the 19 years of the 19-year cycle.
Okay, so, but Hillel did more than make known a 19-year cycle of intercalculations that was, in all probability, used along. He also transferred the observance of the ancient Sabbath from the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th days of the lunar month to every Saturday of the Julian month.
This change necessitated still another, rules of postponement. Changing the weekly Sabbath from the lunar-solar calendar to Sunday is clearly Saturday is clearly implied by the need for rules of postponement, which prior to Hillel's fixing of the calendar had been unnecessary. According to the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia, the new moon is still, and the Sabbath really was, dependent on the lunar cycle. When both the Sabbath and the annual feast are calculated on the lunar-solar calendar, rules of postponement are unnecessary. It is only when the yearly feasts are calculated by one calendar and the weekly Sabbath is calculated by another that there are conflicts requiring rules of postponement.
Yeah, and maybe if you're new to the Creator's calendar, you didn't know there were rules of postponement, but in the Father's calendar, it's not necessary, but in a man-made calendar, which Hillel II was a man, he man-made it the best he could, there has to be rules of postponement. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. I guess, brother, if you'll read, and if you read right there, and then when it talks about each rule, I guess I can read the rule.
Okay. Without the rules of postponement, the annual feast come into conflict with Saturday. For example, if Feast of Trumpets, new moon for the 7th month, were to fall on Sunday, the last day of Festival of Tabernacles would fall on a Saturday, conflicting with the traditional observance for the last day of the feast. Hence, the need for the first and second rules of postponement.
Okay, the first rule is the Jewish New Year, Feast of Trumpets, may not fall on a Sunday, Wednesday, or Friday. And the second one is if the new moon, Moled, for the 7th month falls on a Sunday, Wednesday, or Friday, the new moon is postponed until the following day.
The third rule of postponement ensures that the common year in question would not be longer than 355 days.
Okay, the third one is if the Moled of the 7th month in a common year occurs on a Tuesday at 10:80 a.m. or later, the new moon is postponed until Thursday.
The fourth rule of postponement guarantees that a common year following a leap year is to be not shorter than 383 days.
Okay, the fourth rule in a common year, I'm kind of repeating what you're saying, but I'm reading the actual rule. In a common year following a leap year, if the Moled of the 7th month occurs after 9 a.m. And 589/1080 parts on a Monday morning, new moon is postponed until Tuesday. So can you imagine postponing Sabbath on the Father's calendar and postponing them onto Gregorian weekdays? So that's what had to happen with the rules of postponement. So this fixed calendar is highly regimented.
There are exactly 14 different patterns that the Hebrew calendar years may take. Hebrew calendar years may take, distinguished by the length of the year and the day of the week on which Rosh Hashanah falls. Because the rules are complex, a pattern can repeat itself several times in the course of a few years, and then not occur again for a long time. But the Jewish calendar is known to be extremely accurate. It does not lose or gain time as some of the other calendars do.
And when it was talking about the Jewish calendar there, it's talking about the Father's calendar in the heavens that doesn't lose or gain time as a man-made calendar. So this was an act of survival by Hillel II, and it was made in response to the brutal persecutions of Constantine's son, Constantine. And so with his own hand, the patriarch destroyed the last bonds which united the communities dispersed throughout the Roman and Persian empires with the patriarchate. I don't know how to say that. And so he was more concerned for the certainty of the continuance of Judaism than for the dignity of his own house, and therefore abandoned those functions for which his ancestors had been so jealous and solicitous. And the members of the Sanhedrin favored this innovation. So one man single-handedly kind of did away with the Father's calendar and made a new calendar. Besides Constantine, Hillel II did.
Hillel II fixed the calendar. He, in his position as president of the Sanhedrin, effectively gave permission to the Jews to worship on Saturday for all future time.
So today, nearly 1,700 years later, the action of Constantine and its resulting reaction by Hillel II are still impacting hundreds of millions of people around the world. And I'll let you read these, Brother Pete.
Catholics worship on Sunday in honor of the resurrection. This is in accordance with the act of Constantine, which changed the observance from the lunar-solar calendar Passover to the pagan solar-calculated Easter.
So we're going to have 5 results of all the major religions that you know are resulted because of Constantine and Hillel II.
Jews worship on Saturday because Talmudic law justifies the act of keeping one day in 7 when one does not know when the true Sabbath falls. Most Protestants join with Catholics in worship on Sunday, the first day of the modern Gregorian week, assuming it is the day of the resurrection. Sabbath-keeping Protestants worship on Saturday because it is the 7th day of the modern week, and they assume that since the Jews worship on Saturday, it must be the biblical Sabbath. Muslims likewise honor the pagan papal Gregorian method of calculation by going to mosque for prayers on Friday.
So it's affected everybody all these years later. So it is not possible to find a true Seventh-day Sabbath using a modern Gregorian calendar. The solar calendar is nothing more than a pagan method of time calculation, and the early Julian calendar was established by pagans for pagans, and it was officially adopted for ecclesiastical use at the Council of Nicaea.
It was later adjusted by Jesuit astronomer Christopher Clavius at the behest of Pope Gregory the Ninth. Hence, that's the 13th. Hence the name Gregorian calendar. Clavius confirmed that the Julian calendar, and thus the Gregorian calendar that comes from it, the Gregorian calendar was founded on paganism and has no connection whatsoever to the biblical calendar.
So does the seventh-day Sabbath of the Hebrew before Hillel II match up with your Saturday? And there's a big screen here showing the Sunday through Saturday Gregorian days, or the calendar of the Father, where the Sabbath is always the seventh day. So, or did the original Sabbath get shunted off somewhere down the week and forgotten, say at the Council of Nicaea? The ancient Hebrew 7-day weekly cadence from the Jewish calendar before Hillel II in the 4th century was always like work day was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th day the Sabbath. And then there were, of course, the 2 days at the end of the month, transition and new moon day. But what happened at the Council of Nicaea with Rome was Saturday was fixed forever as the 7th day on a Gregorian calendar.
None who desire to worship the Creator on His holy Sabbath will calculate their worship days by this abomination of desolation that dishonors Yahweh and desolates the soul. Only the Luni-solar calendar of creation can pinpoint when the true Sabbath occurs. Lay aside the traditions of man. Accept only the word of Yah and worship Him by His ordained method of timekeeping.
Okay, thank you, Brother Pete. And that's the end of this little PowerPoint, this little study. And this article is made by World's Last Chance, and I'll leave the link below. And I think I'll also put it up on our website, and it's How Two Men Changed the World. Let's see. Let me see if I can get to it. I've got it right here. Yeah, Constantine I and Hillel II, 2 men who changed the whole world. And that's where the article is from. And I've got all the links here. So, yeah, did anybody have a comment or comment about the Hillel II calendar? Is that the first you've heard of it? Or anything about the rules of postponement? We'll leave the recording on for a little discussion.
It amazes me that there's no new thing under the sun. We tend to cave in on our belief about Sabbath too often, we as a whole population, because it's inconvenient and we couldn't possibly make a living if blah, blah, blah. You know, all those excuses. We make the excuses, the same excuses that the Jewish people in captivity made when they capitulated to their host country's dates. And so no wonder it is very strongly indicative of who you follow. Because if Baal be Baal, if Baal be God, then follow him. If God be God, follow him. Yahweh be Yah. So it's just amazing how we people tend to have the same clay feet.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Yes, we do have to make a decision who we're going to worship, and the daily worship says who we're worshiping, doesn't it? So thank you. We have another comment.
I found it pretty interesting that about the council after Nicaea, the Laodicean okay. Council.
Sure.
And that I forget that. I think I'd heard it before, but it wasn't in my immediate grab file folder, because it points out that Christians at that time were keeping a Luni-solar calendar and had to be basically outlawed by the church by severe penalty, whatever that might be.
Yeah, and I saw, there it said that some of the faithful people kept it for 1,000 years, even after they could have severe penalty for keeping the Sabbath according to the signs in the heavens. there's probably going to be a time coming for us where there'll be a severe penalty for not going to church or whatever, getting your ticket stamped that you were there on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, the days that are worshipped here in America.
Yes, it may be that as some of them did, we will have to flee to caves and hide out.
Yes, we don't know.
So be good more.
Thank you, Susan. Well, you know, the rules of postponement, of course, when I first found out about the Creator Sabbath, that was just way another chapter I didn't even think about. I didn't know that was even took place. I mean, I was in the Messianic groups and kept the feast days for at least 12 years before, and I didn't know they were switching around if trumpets landed on a Monday or if something else landed on a Tuesday or New Moon Day would change to Wednesday. I didn't know all that stuff was going on, and I don't think people know that is happening. They're just following the calendar they're given.
I have a question on your slide, which talked about Hillel II changing the lunar calendar Sabbath, the 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th to Saturday. Do you have a quote where that's stated?
Yeah, I have all these quotes below. Or maybe that might have been a quote from the ladies that wrote this article. But he did, by changing it to always being Saturday, that would be a fact that he changed it from the 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th, because he was saying it will always be on a Gregorian Saturday, regardless of the date, is actually what was happening. And I don't know if that was a direct quote, Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
It might have just been a summation of what happened because of the change.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Anybody else before we close the recording today? Okay, well, I hope everybody that's here will stay and we can have a conversation and questions, and if newcomers have anything they'd like to ask, we'll save time for them. So I'm going to say Shabbat Shalom. We'll be back next week, and thank you, everybody, for being here and helping with being present, your presence on the line, and Brother Pete for reading, and for Susan and Charlotte and the comments, and for each one. Thank you.
The point here we were making is that the tombstones, there are a number of tombstones that have been recovered from Jerusalem, I believe, or at least Israel, the land, that have recorded time in these very, very early years. And information that's on these tombstones is, and Sally, what's on the tombstones?
We're talking about a set of 13 tombstones. And it's very interesting to see that they were generally, sometimes they would leave out one piece of information, but generally speaking, they established the date of the person's death with 4 pieces of timekeeping information. There was the day of the week that they died, the day of the month that they died, the year in the Shemitah cycle, which is a 7-year cycle, that they died, and the number of years since the destruction of the temple. Of course, you would have to add 70 years to convert that to either AD or CE.
Okay, and all the weeks and months and years that you're mentioning are the weeks and months of the lunar-solar calendar, right?
It appears to me.
Yes, and particularly the first 3, and that was the piece of information that was interesting. The earliest ones gave for instance, we can look at here. These are all, by the way, I don't think we said it in the beginning, but these are Jewish tombstones.
Okay.
This is Jacob, son of Shemo. Yeah, son of Shemo. Died 10th day of Shabbat, which is a month, right?
11th month.
11th month. Second day, then it says 3rd year, and that must be of the week, right? 2nd day. third year of sabbatical cycle, 364 years after the temple. And of course, you have to add
346 years after the temple.
And so you have to add 70 to that to get our day 416 AD.
Okay.
But the point is, it's the second day,
of the week, and it's the 10th day of the month.
And that 10th day of the month is the 10th day of the month. If you're using the Luni-solar calendar, those 2 days are locked together. The month starts a day before the week, so the first week would run from 1 through 7, and then when you get to the 10th day, you're on the second day of that week.
Okay.
And so the others then follow that same pattern, and these three, again, were the earliest ones that we have, and these are through Joseph Damone. That's how we found them, or got hold of the information from them. So the first year was, let's see, which one's first? Yeah, 416 AD, 439, and 455 are these three. And after that, the same information is there or missing, but it no longer has that lock pattern to the month to day of the week. So somebody could say, well, it's just coincidence that you found three in a row that were locked. Because certainly there would be a coincidence factor if they weren't locked and you were following consecutive timekeeping. There would be 1 out of 7 would show that pattern. Anyway, that's what we wanted to share, I believe. Does that seem to wrap it up?
Yeah. Did you have any more to add to that, Sally?
No, that's all.
Okay, well, thank you. That's interesting, that those tombstones are from 416, 439, 455. There were like 13 of them that were found that were going by the lunar-solar calendar on the tombstone date.
Yes, there was. Now I remember there was another piece of information to add here, and that was the correlation. Hillel's calendar, of course, if people were using Hillel's calendar, they wouldn't get this correlation. So, I'm trying to think, I'm sorry. But Hillel's calendar, it turns out, was not really fully applied until almost 800 AD, according to the Wikipedia article on Hillel's calendar. So these would, of course, fit in that time frame, and it would show. I think the other thing I wanted to state or restate was that tombstones are very much tied to tradition and the way information is put on them. Even the reckoning of time for the tombstone even though people might have culturally been shifting to Hillel, they probably still would have held to the traditional way of recording time on the tombstones for some time. But it would have pointed to a prior time when they did use that, where the traditions got started.
Right, very good. Okay, very good. So that was very interesting. Thank you, and I hope that will be good information added on the end of this recording. So I'm going to close it again. Thank you, Brother Pete, and Sister Sally. Something else?
Hello, this is Nellie.